For years, Formula One fans, and even some insiders, brushed it off. The struggles that came with switching teams? Just excuses. Not fast enough in your new car? Must be the driver. Lacking consistency? Adapt quicker. But that mindset is starting to shift, and ironically, it's shifting because of the most successful driver the sport has ever seen. Lewis Hamilton's rocky transition to Ferrari in 2025 isn't just a headline grabber. It's becoming a case study, and for a few familiar faces on the grid, it's also long-awaited validation. Let's rewind. When Daniel Ricciardo swapped Red Bull for Renault, and then Renault for McLaren, people rolled their eyes when he said it'd take time. When Carlos Sainz jumped from Toro Rosso to Renault, then McLaren, then Ferrari, it was more of the same. Every underwhelming session or awkward setup change was met with impatience. The adaptation phase was dismissed as a nice way to sugarcoat being off the pace. But now Hamilton, 7-time world champion, record pole sitter, one of the most meticulous drivers in the paddock, is facing the same issues. And suddenly the conversation has changed. Carlos Sainz, now racing in blue at Williams, couldn't help but notice the irony. The man who replaced him at Ferrari is having the kind of season Sainz knows all too well, one where nothing clicks easily and everything feels just slightly off. In a candid conversation with Mundo Deportivo, Sainz shared what's probably been simmering under the surface for years. People never really bought it, he said, referring to the learning curve that comes with switching teams. Now that a 7-time champion is going through it, suddenly it's real. For Sainz and guys like Ricciardo, who've been labeled inconsistent or lacking adaptation skills, Hamilton's struggle is like an unexpected moment of clarity. It confirms what I was saying 5 or 10 years ago, he added. Maybe you didn't buy it then. Now you do. And he's got a point. Hamilton is still Hamilton. His resume hasn't shrunk. His instincts haven't dulled. He even snagged a sprint win in China earlier this year. But when it comes to nailing qualifying laps, keeping pace with Charles Leclerc, or extracting consistent race performance, it's been anything but smooth sailing. Hamilton's comments after the Spanish Grand Prix were telling. Defeated, deflated, and unusually introspective, he admitted to Sky Sports that the problem might not be the car. It's probably just me, he said. And that quiet confession said a lot more than any long-winded explanation could. It was the clearest sign yet that he's still searching for harmony with the SF25, something he used to have in spades at Mercedes. Sainz, who knows the quirks and sharp edges of Ferrari machinery better than most, isn't surprised. And while he takes no pleasure in seeing his successor struggle, he does feel seen. Because for once, the F1 world is acknowledging what drivers like him have been saying all along. Adapting takes time. But there's a catch. Sainz isn't waving a flag of vindication just yet. He's quick to point out that while struggling early on is understandable, staying in that struggle zone, that's a problem. It's fine if it takes 5 or 6 months, he said, but eventually you've got to get there. That's what matters, getting to the level where you're showing what you're worth. Sainz knows that road well. His own arc at Ferrari wasn't immediate magic either, but by mid-2022, he was taking poles at Silverstone, Spa, and Austin, and scoring a win. I got to the level I wanted, he said, and that's the difference. You've got to arrive. So while Hamilton's current form might shift the narrative, there's still pressure to evolve, and quickly, because understanding the problem is only half the battle. Solving it is what defines the greats. He's sitting 6th in the standings. That's not disastrous, but it's not what anyone, especially Ferrari, signed up for. There's time left this season, but the window is starting to narrow. Can Hamilton find that sweet spot before the year gets written off? And with Charles Leclerc continuing to bank podiums, the comparison is only going to get more uncomfortable. With drivers switching teams more than ever, and regulation resets like 2026 around the corner, the old adapt or you're out mindset may be losing its grip. Is the F1 world finally ready to be more patient when a driver needs more than a couple of races to settle in? Or will Hamilton's struggles simply reset the expectations once again, until the next big name needs time to figure things out? More to come. It was supposed to be a game changer, a mid-season twist that could shake the grid and shift momentum. But if you ask Lewis Hamilton, it was nothing but a big waste of time, and more importantly, money. That's how things escalated after F1's latest technical directive landed in Spain, aimed at cracking down on flexible front wings. The FIA, not known for making changes on a whim, rolled out TD018 to clamp down on clever interpretations of the rules. Teams were forced to tweak or even rebuild their front wings to ensure they stayed within the newly clarified limits. But when the dust settled in Barcelona and McLaren locked out the top 2 spots yet again, Hamilton wasn't convinced any of it had made a difference. Speaking after qualifying, Hamilton didn't mince words. He called the directive pointless, suggesting the FIA's clampdown achieved little more than burning through team budgets. "What a waste of money," he said flatly. "It changed nothing. Everyone's wings still bend. It's just half the bending, and everyone's had to make new wings and spend more money to make them. It doesn't make sense." In other words, F1 went to war with flexi wings, and nobody really noticed. The Ferrari driver went on to say his car felt almost identical in the simulator before the race weekend. Maybe a touch more oversteer in the high-speed corners, but nothing dramatic. That only strengthened his belief that the directive didn't deliver what it promised. But not everyone in the paddock is buying Hamilton's take. Enter Günther Steiner, the former Haas team boss who's never been one to stay quiet, especially when he smells drama. On the Red Flags podcast, Steiner gave Hamilton's comments the side-eye, calling the idea of wasted money nonsense. "There was no money wasted," Steiner said. "Everybody had to make sure their wing wasn't flexing. That's part of the job." According to him, the fix was pretty straightforward. Some teams like McLaren simply added a bracket to reduce flex. Nothing exotic, nothing that should have wrecked anyone's development budget. More importantly, Steiner argued that the teams who really knew their cars, like McLaren, weren't rattled by the change at all. They tweaked what needed tweaking, ran their simulations, and came right back out swinging. "If anything," said Steiner, "the whole situation exposed the divide between teams who understand their cars intimately and those still fumbling to find the right setup. The fact that McLaren cruised to yet another 1-2 finish in Spain, to him, that says it all. McLaren knows exactly what they need to do with the car," Steiner continued. "If they lose something like the flexi wing, they go to the wind tunnel and replicate that balance again. They're not scrambling." He even admitted the replacements weren't perfect. Maybe you only recover 99.8% of the performance lost, but if you know where that 0.2% is, you've got control. That's what separates the top-tier teams from the rest of the field. Hamilton's frustration is understandable. Ferrari's 2025 campaign hasn't exactly gone to plan, but some in the paddock are wondering, is Lewis letting emotion cloud the technical reality? Sure, the directive didn't flip the grid on its head, but in a sport where margins are measured in milliseconds, even a subtle change can ripple through a season. Was it really a waste, or just not the silver bullet he hoped for? And if teams like McLaren took the change in stride, should others be asking themselves why they didn't? Steiner's praise of McLaren wasn't just about them. It was a veiled critique of teams still struggling with consistency. Which brings us to the real elephant in the garage, Ferrari. With Hamilton already floating the idea of shifting focus to 2026 and Charles Leclerc carrying the team's best hopes for podiums, the question now becomes, is Ferrari's development strategy reactive or proactive? And if Lewis Hamilton isn't feeling the gains, or even seeing them, is that a Ferrari problem, or a sign that the field has simply moved on? More questions than answers as the season rolls on. Stay tuned.